One of the most iconic buildings along the north coast is the Mussenden Temple. And I remember going on the train to Belfast and trying to creak my head that way just to be able to see it before I went through the tunnel. And even when you go to the Strand at McGilligan, there it is at the end of it. You just can't miss it. It's sitting on the edge of the cliff. And there's a story behind that. It was built in 1875 by Augustus Hervey, the Bishop of Derry. He was also the Earl of Bristol, so he had a lot of money in his own right. And he could do things like that. I mean, if he fancied building something, he could do it. He didn't have to worry about the money. But he loved Roman architecture. And when he was there one time, he visited the Temple of Vesta. And it really made an impression on him. And he remembered it and he thought sometime, I am going to build that. I'm going to build a copy of that. Now, though he was married, he had a favourite cousin, and her name was Frida Mussenden. Now, she may have been a cousin, but there's speculation that perhaps the relationship was a bit more close than cousinly. And he decided that he would build a copy of the Temple of Vesta for his cousin Frida. But he needed the plans for it. So he went back again to Rome and he was looking at it and he walked around and he tried to find out, who the architect was, but the architect naturally was long, long dead. And then he went into a tavern and this man approached him and sat down beside him. And he said, I hear you're looking for plans for the Temple of Vesta. And the bishop said, but how did you know that? He said, oh, I've watched you walking around and taking measurements. He said, but I can help you, but it comes at a cost. Well, the bishop was so enamored with the idea of building this temple and actually getting plans for it that he said, well, what will it cost me? He said, well, I'll let you know when the time comes. He said, how much do you want it? Would you give up your immortal soul for this? And the bishop, not really believing that much in the devil, said, of course I would. Of course I would. Give me the plans and I will go ahead and build it. And the next day, in his lodgings, a big envelope was shoved onto the door, and in it were the plans for Downhill. Not exactly like the Temple of Vesta, but near enough. And he was so excited, and he rushed home, and of course he was welcomed back into the diocese because he hadn't been there for quite a while, and he arranged for the temple to be built. And he brought Frida there and he said, I'm going to build a temple for you here. He said, we will call it the library. It'll be a summer residence. He said, but we'll tell my wife that she can visit as well. That's what makes everybody think that maybe the relationship wasn't all that it should have been, because it was certainly known that the bishop was not monogamous. He liked women, he liked food, and he liked wine. And you could see that because he was of a portly stature. But he arranged for the temple to be built anyway, the Mussenden Temple. And while that was being built, something really unfortunate happened, because just 2 years before the completion, Frida died. So it wasn't a temple in her honour really to be able to enjoy. It actually became a memorial temple. And after that, the bishop became quite weird. He would do things like looking to see who would he elevate to a higher place in his church in the diocese. And he didn't want anybody who was portly like himself. So the word went out that anybody who wanted to be elevated in the church, any ambitious cleric, would have to lose weight. And the bishop actually arranged it, that he would meet at the dusk all these clerics who wanted a higher place in the church. He made them run over bogs and marshes and watch them. And if they lost enough weight, then they would get the job that they ambitioned for. But he used the temple himself. He had a beautiful library in it. And then he realized one night, as he was sitting reading his Bible, he realized this is the day that the devil said he would take his dues. And he laughed. He said, but that's not going to happen. And he lit a candle, and he sat and he read. And then the candle began to flutter. And there appeared beside the bookshelves the man who had told him about the plans. And before his very eyes, this man changed into an ugly devil with horns, with cloven foot, and approached. And he said, "Ha ha, I have come for my dues." And the bishop realized that there really was a devil. And he wondered, what could he do to avoid this? And being a very crafty and clever man, he looked at the candle which was burning down, and he said, would you mind waiting until the candle burns out? And the devil knew he was going to get his dues, so he said, I will. And the bishop went on reading, and he was looking, and he said, "My Lord, what is this? What does this mean?" And the devil looked at him and he said, "What?" He said, "This in the Bible, what does it mean?" And the devil said, "Tell me what it means." He said, "No, you've got to read it for yourself." And the devil began to approach. And as he approached, he seemed to get smaller, and he actually changed into a very dark cloud. And he approached this dark cloud, and the bishop still had the Bible open. And the voice said, "What am I to read?" And the bishop said, "There, look." And the cloud went closer and closer, and the bishop clapped the Bible shut. And it began to rock, and he locked the Bible. And then he had a lead box in the corner. And he opened that lead box, and he put the Bible in there, and he shut it. Heavy and all as it was, he travelled with that box. And of course, porters complained about the weight of it, but he would not leave it behind. And when he died in Albano in Italy, in the year of 1803, his body was brought back to Ickworth, his own parish, where he had been before he became bishop. And they say that in the coffin, that they laid his head on top of a soft white pillow, and underneath that soft white pillow was the lead box. And he was buried. And from that day to this, no one can go near that grave without having a strange, eerie feeling that causes them to shiver, and the feeling of unease makes them rush away. So perhaps the devil is still trying to get out of the lead box belonging to Bishop Hervey.